pissed off.
Again? Are you ever happy?
No. Never.
Jesus Christ.
I feel better than last week.
Yeah?
I'd rather have this permanent state of like slightly angry.
Because it keeps you motivated?
Yeah. Because then like it's just the right mix of not giving a fuck. So like I feel like not giving a fuck and then also like energy because you're riled up. So like if I'm very, very productive in that state. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to be calm. I don't want to be like
happy.
No
zen for you.
I want to feel like ever so slightly fucking on edge. And I just feel like I'm just ultra productive. That's just me. So
nice. Are you going to be the only one there at the open today?
Yeah.
First time it hits the market, or no? Just day one, or no? I mean, obviously since the price drop.
I don't know, day 2 or 3.
Nice. It's a good day for it.
Oh fuck.
That's good.
Okay. We've got approximately 35 minutes. 35 minutes.
Yep.
Testing. Test. Oh, that's pretty my voice doesn't project very well for some reason. I don't know why.
Testing.
Too much.
Testing.
Too little.
Testing.
Still in bitch mode.
Testing. How about now? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close.
All right, so what's on the agenda today?
So, I per my other conversation with one of my friends, who's an attorney, we got into like I mentioned last time, the value of having an agent and how a lot of people perceive that agents don't do anything. One, that they're not of value. And then, they could easily sell the house themselves, or they could buy the house themselves and they could do everything on their own.
Well, you're certainly very welcome to do that. There's no rule or law that says you have to be represented by a licensed agent. However, in the real world, good luck with that, because it might seem so clear and so obvious on day one that it's just step 1, step 2, step 3, you're closed. But in reality, there's so many variables that pop up along the way, and you have to know how to navigate them in real time, and you have to know how to react to them, because if nothing else, time is of the essence in all these deals. So I'm trying to think of an example, but there's just so many that like it's not straightforward. It's not like black and white. There's no like standard blueprint for it that you could just read online or whatever. It's just not like that in real life. So again, you're very welcome to do that, but good luck.
I agree. And I think there's, so that kind of brought me back to kind of when I purchased my home with an agent, because at that time I wasn't licensed. I was just getting my license. And at the same time, I had that perception to where, well, what is he doing? I'm sending him all the houses I want to see. All he's doing is scheduling them, and then we're going to go see them. And he's meeting me there, and we're seeing them and going for a showing. But now, from this side of the table, to your point, some of those values, just to mention a few, if you are like 90% of the people, you have a 9-to-5 job. Mm-hmm. You're busy with whatever you do. So at times you don't look at your phone 24/7 like agents do, because that's pretty much the job, is to stay on your top of your phone, your emails, whatever comes in. Because to your point, especially when the market's hot, the areas are hot, the properties move quickly, and you can snooze on them just like that. And a lot of people think like, oh, you know what? Let's just wait till Monday. Well, no, a lot of deals actually get closed over the weekend. The
Mm-hmm.
deals come in on Saturday, Sunday. By Monday, there's an acceptance, and you're ready to rock with the inspections, etc. So just to your point, be able to juggle the mortgage, the inspection, the seller or the buyer with the other agent. I think that's where a lot of that, and it's not hard. It's just time consuming. So, we all have 24 hours in a day. So for everyone to be able to juggle all those things on top of their job, I think that's where a lot of the value comes in. And if you have an agent that's very organized,
Mm-hmm.
that's where they actually make it seem like it's so easy and simple.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you know that you're having a good agent.
A lot of the best companies, and this applies to any agent as well, but they take something or a process that is very, very complicated and they package it in a way that makes it seem very, very simple. And that's how you know, like, you're doing a very good job. So a lot of people may be working with their agent and they go through the process and they're like, man, I probably could have done that. I probably didn't need him or her. But in reality, it only seems so smooth because that agent knows what they're doing. And that agent was able to not only do things the right way, but kind of protect you, because there's a lot of stuff that comes up that maybe you don't have to deal with as the client, which is good. And the agent takes a lot of pressure off of the client as well. So there's so many specialized areas that you need knowledge in from start to finish in a real estate transaction, and the average person does not have that knowledge. And why would they? Why should they? So again, that you can identify, a few top level things that happen in the transaction. Like, okay, you go on your home search, you put in an offer, you negotiate a contract, you whatever. But in between that, there's so many things that people are not aware of. And that's why you need an agent. Okay. For example, what's going to happen when, new ideas popped in my head, but one very valuable reason to have an agent is so that you, the client, do not get taken advantage of. Because if you're the seller and you're representing yourself and the buyer has an agent, that agent is trained to negotiate real estate transactions. You're not.
Right.
So if I'm negotiating against a seller who I know doesn't know shit about real estate transactions or real estate contracts or about, how to negotiate properly,
right,
I could very easily, or any agent likely could very easily negotiate a better deal for the buyer. So you're doing a good job for your buyer, but you're also you're not taking advantage of them. I don't think that's fair to say, but if they don't know any better and they want to take the risk of, representing themselves, you're probably going to negotiate a better deal than if you were negotiating against an agent. So for people who think they're going to save money by not hiring an agent, there's one reason right there why you're probably not going to save money. It's probably going to cost you money.
right.
So that's one very specific cost of not hiring an agent.
Well, and then like you say, so you think you're saving money, but then you also wasting so much time in between, because guess what? Now you have to deal with all the showings, you have to deal with all the inspections and so forth. And I think the biggest thing that you touched on is, they think that they save money, but at the end of the day, I don't even think everyone, has a perception that their house is the best and worth the most. So a lot of the sellers don't even know what the true value of their home is.
Mm-hmm.
So just because, this house next to you sold for XYZ, it's a good comparable, but at the same time, you have to be realistic and put all those factors. Does it have 4 rooms? Well, theirs had 5. Yours has 2 bathrooms. There has 2.5.
Exactly. It's a skill to value a property, dare I say, fairly, because a lot of people will not. That's a skill. All right. So if you're a seller, you probably don't know how to do that.
Agreed.
And then you're shooting yourself in the foot on day one. So you don't even have a chance to get off the start line because you didn't even price it right. You didn't even get the first thing done correctly. One major reason for that is that sellers will almost always inflate the price with their own sentimental value, which to any buyer doesn't mean jack shit. Okay, let's just cut
Take
the crap
your shit
there.
out of here and get the fuck. You know?
Yeah, they don't care. You know, I can sympathize with people, but buyers don't give a rat's ass that, you know, your kids took their first steps in the house. They don't give a rat's ass that, like, you have all these memories. They don't care that, you know, your family, you know, grew up there. What they don't care.
No,
they don't care. And that's not something that makes the house worth more. But every seller thinks it does.
Right.
So they're looking at everything through a clouded lens. So that's another value of having a real estate agent. Because if you're doing a good job as an agent, you're helping them understand that. You're helping them understand that it's a very objective thing. That the price is going to be determined based on math and data and facts and history. And it has nothing to do with, you know, what you think it's worth just because
you have a 7-year-old
you're too close to it.
In the basement.
Yeah. They don't care. So, but if they do, but they all, like I said, they all do think that it matters, and then they value the house too high at the beginning, and then nothing else we're going to talk about matters. Right. Because there's going to be no contract, there's going to be no negotiation, there's going to be no escrow, there's going to be no nothing.
There won't be any showings.
Yeah, right. There's going to be no showings too. So, and then like you mentioned, just the day-to-day activities of selling a house, like the labor you got to put in, showing up to do showings, you know, running around doing whatever tasks are necessary, and there's a lot of them.
Open houses, yeah. I mean, there's labor involved, there's time. Yeah.
So it's a service like anything else. I mean, you're, like I said, you're welcome to do it. You have the skills, you have the time. Maybe some people do, but in my experience, anyone who tries to do that to save a buck, they wind up actually wasting more money because the house stays on the market a lot longer than it should, which means likely holding costs of some kind, at least taxes.
Right.
If you have a mortgage, obviously mortgage, utilities, all that stuff, which will add up very quickly and will cost you more than hiring an agent. Yeah. So that's one reason. What else?
Well, I mean, just if you share the open house that you're going to do today, and kind of the situation that even with having an agent, the difficulties of the seller and kind of navigating through that tough path, and essentially, like you said, all the money that it cost them long term.
Right. So as is human nature, though, on the front end, they think, oh, I'm going to save commission and everything's going to still go the same way. I'm going to sell the house. Everything's going to go the same. I'm going to make the most money, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to save on the commission. No, dipshit, you're not. Okay? You're not. Because there's many variables to consider here, not just the commission. Okay, you don't just remove the commission from the equation and everything else remains the same. That's not how it works.
Right.
But for some reason, people think that it does.
Well, and if you know, to your point, like think about, so the house that you're doing today, probably been over a year on the market. You know, if you look into the marketing materials, which is a cost, if you look into the open houses that have been done, which is time and cost on flyers, if you look at, you know, just the time of putting up the open signs and the tents and all that stuff to direct traffic, if you value or if you evaluate the time over that year that an agent has spent on that house and it still hasn't sold just simply because a seller perceives that their house is worth a lot more than what it truly is, that agent has spent an entire year and devoted that much time and still hasn't gotten paid.
Right.
Just because you're being hard-headed and you think that there's, again, you perceive that there's a higher value of your house, where comparables and math, and like you said, and numbers say otherwise. Mm-hmm. You know, people lie, numbers never lie.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really not a good time for you to sell the house based on how much it's worth. Sometimes it is.
Right.
But that doesn't change the reality that it's worth what it is today in today's market and based on today's conditions. But sometimes you get that number, the real number, and it's just way too low because maybe you bought bad at the beginning.
Right, before
Who knows?
recession or whatnot.
Who knows? Every situation is different, but that doesn't mean that you should try to list it for some ridiculous number, because that's going to cost you time and money, frustration, stress, everything. So at that point, though, you kind of just got to take your medicine and move on if you can. Some people really can't. You really can't afford to lose all the money. But sometimes that's a scenario as well. But nonetheless, like we've been saying, it doesn't change what the value really is.
Yeah. And I think as a good agent, when you do first have your first meeting, first consultation with a buyer, seller, or usually a seller, you're letting them know that, you know what, this is like, what is your expectations? Like we talked about, what is your expectation for this property? Well, I'm hoping to get at least 100 or 70. Well, at the current state of the market only bears 165, plus commissions and closing costs, et cetera, because that's what usually happens in Illinois. The sellers pays both sides. You actually net out, probably close to 150, if not even less.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to tell them that, maybe you should stay here, live a little bit longer in this place until the market does pick up a little bit, and then consider listing it again.
Mm-hmm. It's a very important thing that you just mentioned, which is when you can break down all the costs on the front end, and you can really show them what they can expect to take home after closing, after all fees, after commissions, after everything. And oftentimes it's an eye opener for them. It's like, oh, I'm actually making a lot more than I thought I would, or, it changes their mind so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important to share those numbers at the beginning, it's also very important not to inflate their egos. Okay. So when they say, well, I think it's worth this, in your example, you're only like 5,000 off, which is not usually how it goes. If you're that close, then you're probably going to come to,
right.
You're probably going to make a deal because they're likely reasonable, and they're going to listen, and they're going to take your advice, and you're going to meet at a number that works for everybody. But usually you're not that close. Okay. So then you got to bring them out of the clouds and back down to reality, which is not always that easy. And then they use the classic move of, oh, well, the last guy said he'll do it for this. So then they try to squeeze you into like giving them what they want. But then you as an agent have to stay strong, and you can't let that happen, because it's going to be a bad situation for you. It's going to be an irresponsible business decision for you.
Right.
Which opens up another debate where some agents will say, well, it's better to just get the business now and then try to get a price reduction later. But I don't think that's acting in the best interest of the clients in the first place, because beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's not going to sell at that price or anywhere near it. And to go from where you are to where it needs to be is going to be a long, difficult, painful journey. Okay, so your clients are not getting good service because they're not going to sell their damn house. You're not making a responsible business decision.
You're not making money.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, yeah, because you're not making any money. They're not getting good service, so they're not going to send you referrals. So you're not going to grow your business. So there's just no value for anybody in that scenario. But of course, then you're always faced with that. Well, I could get a listing, or I could walk away from a listing, and that's always difficult to do. But it very seldom works out the right way when that happens, I think. So if they're reasonable people and they want to sell the house, they'll be willing to listen to the truth, even if they don't like it, and they will hopefully consider it and at least come closer to reality. And I don't want to sit here and make it seem like all sellers are unreasonable, but sometimes they are.
Yeah. I feel like especially we see, especially once the market is turning up, and a lot of houses are going for sale. A lot of houses are actually, listed at a higher price. A lot of sellers think that justifies what, because they saw it at Redfin, because they saw it on Zillow, that this is what it is. Well, just because it listed for $239 doesn't mean it sold for $239. It could actually sold for $199.
Right.
You know, so sometimes they don't have the access to the MLS to see the actual facts and the actual transaction that closed to see the numbers to justify their reasoning for those prices. And if, like you said, and if you could just bring them back to reality, you know, you could show them sometimes how hard it is to see what the facts are, but also as an agent, I think it is, like you said, a service for us to have the balls to take on those tough conversations.
That's part of good service. I think it is. It's almost always a tough conversation because you say it's worth this and they think it's worth a lot more. I mean, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head where I said it was worth something and they said, okay, that's more than we were expecting. No, it's always like,
what?
Yeah, always.
Timmy next door said.
Yeah, whether they're faking it or not,
Yeah.
just to kind of get you to bump it up. Because I've seen that too. Yeah, they always think it's worth more, bottom line. So if you're offering good service, you should be willing to tell them the truth. No matter how much like you think it's going to hurt their feelings or offend them or whatever. If you believe that it's the truth and you could justify it with real data, then you got to tell them the truth. You can't let them take control of the situation at that point because that's not in their best interest. They're hurting themselves and you know it. And they're also putting you in a bad spot. So just it should seem obvious to people that that's not going to be a winning scenario for everybody. So what's the value of an agent?
A good one has lots of values. You know, again, I think you touched on something, and I have an example of just that, to where a client originally contacted one of our agents. She told her spiel, gave the presentation XYZ. Like, well, this is where we want to list it at. She said, you know what? Unfortunately, she's like, this is not anywhere near where it should be listed. So the seller ended up going with someone else. She ends up going with someone else. 6 months later, cancels the contract. She realized what was going on. The other agent was just, blowing smoke. And then she ends up signing with one of our agents because she was brutally honest with her. Mm-hmm. She understood that in 6 months that, oh shit, I was wrong. Whoever I was talking to, just didn't know what they were doing. And then that actually could also help you gain business. And like you said, maybe even further referrals, simply because of your honesty and having the ability to have those tough conversations up front and not worrying about the initial listing or that possible paycheck. But guess what? If the listing is overpriced, you're not going to get any action. So that paycheck's never coming anyways. So you're just wasting your time.
Yep. Quick story. I went to do a listing presentation for some sellers, but excuse me. And they didn't like the price. Naturally. Okay, fine. So they were interviewing different brokers, went with somebody else. Okay, so I kind of was monitoring the situation as it was happening, as it got listed and all that stuff. Listed for much higher. Sits, doesn't sell. Comes down, I don't know, it was like 6 months or something like that. Comes down to where I said it should have been in the first place. Winds up selling for that price. Pretty much right on the number. They actually contacted me later just to say, we just wanted to say that we realize now that you were just being honest. You were correct. And just wanted to say, thank you for your efforts. That's nice. I didn't get the business, but that's nice. But it just kind of goes to show.
Yeah. I mean, that's nice that they even contacted you, though, instead of like, I had the guts again to admit they're wrong, right?
Yeah, that in itself, I mean, it was worth it.
It's like, what? There's people like that? No.
I'll take that over the paycheck any damn day.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the only time that ever happened. But still, it felt pretty sweet. Kind of just, what's the word? Like affirmed that I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And I mean, it's indisputable because like you're presenting facts. This is not theory. This has happened.
Right.
So you can't really dispute it. You can't say
Right.
that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Here's the facts.
Yeah, 6 of these same identical houses sold in the last 3 months.
Right. And so it should be pretty
Yeah.
obvious to people, but for some reason it's not. They think they know better than,
Yeah.
the whole market. But anyway, that's my story.
Well, and it's like I said, I've never heard of that, which is great. And like you said, I think it helps you, like you said, affirm the fact that you believe you're doing what you're doing is right. You know what you're talking about. So it kind of does boost your ego a little bit, which is great because it kind of reassures, okay, like I should maybe keep doing this. Like,
that was a key moment in my career, because the next time I went to do a presentation, I felt very confident. I felt more confident to look them in the eye and say, here's the truth as I
Right.
see it. And because before, like when you're brand new, it's kind of intimidating, I guess, for some people. If you have to tell these people who have invested probably all their money,
right.
and they're so emotionally invested in this house, you have to tell them that, they made a bad purchase, or, they made a mistake, or it's not worth what they think, whatever.
Right.
And you kind of crush them a little bit. So it might be a little intimidating for some people, but ultimately it is in their best interest, which is ultimately your job as an agent, to represent their best interest at all time. And it is in their best interest for you to drop kick them in the mouth with some truth and some knowledge. Okay. So you can't be afraid to do it.
I think that is one of the biggest values that, speaking of what agents' values are, that is the biggest one that I think we bring to the table, to a conversation, to a consultation between buyers and sellers. And it's the same thing. I'm going to do 3 showings today with some buyers, and they get so gung-ho and so emotional about these properties because they've been renovated and they're pretty, white cabinets, everything's done, white trim, boo hoo hoo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, just because it shines doesn't mean there's no stink underneath it.
Yeah.
Or that it is actually worth what it's listed at. So sometimes, again, it's like, yeah, of course they're going to be happy that you're telling them they could get it for a cheaper price because the house is overpriced essentially. But at times they're even willing to pay that extra price just because they're so attached to it. And then, like you said, then they realize, 10 years later that they have made a bad decision because now what they paid for is finally what they could sell it for, which then after commissions, all that bullshit, you've lost on your investment. Because that's what it is. It's a big ass investment.
Exactly. That's another huge value of an agent. If you have a good agent, they're going to tell you shouldn't buy for this number, because even though it's 5-10 years down the road, you're not going to be able to sell it. You're not going to be able to make a profit. You're going to lose money.
Yeah.
And that, even though you may love the house, that's a bad decision. Okay. And it's that simple. So a good agent is going to kind of be able to forecast. It's hard to say that because things are always going to be changing all the time. You never really know. But if you know they're overpaying today,
yeah,
they're probably going to be losing money when they sell. Probably. Okay. So, no matter how emotional they are, no matter how much they want to buy it, if you're doing a good job, you're going to make sure they understand it's a bad financial decision. It might be a good emotional decision because it's the perfect house, perfect area, whatever,
right.
But it's a bad investment. It's a bad financial move. Okay. You're not there to make them happy in that way. You're not there to, hold their hand. You're there to give them the right information. But at the end of the day, it's their choice.
Right.
You don't have any control, but you can't just say, well, they want to buy the house, they're very eager and it's overpriced, but they want to pay and that's okay because I'm going to make a commission, so I'm just going to shut my mouth. It's easy to do that too, but guess what? When they realize, and they will, when they realize that they bought bad, they're going to say, this asshole didn't do his job, or he didn't know what he was doing. So they're not just not going to send you referrals, they're actually going to slander you.
Right.
They're going to tell people you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and you're not going to make it. Yeah. And it will be your fault. That's the thing.
Right. Well, yeah, at the end of the day, what people don't realize that in MLS records, the sale of the property is attached to the agent forever until, there's I don't know, there's 5-year history of 5 sales or 5 sales of the, it goes from whatever, how many, I think 5 times that the property is sold. So it could be in, 50 years, it could be in the last, if the property sold 5 times in the last 5 years, whatever. But your name is attached to that property. So that's kind of like when people look at reviews, it's also a way of reviewing someone to see like, oh, you know what, this guy, you can see like, oh shit, Gino, he sold all these properties in Elmo Park. So he knows what he's doing in Elmo Park.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way of looking at and kind of justifying someone's credibility. But to your point, if it's a bad decision, you're also linked to that bad decision, which is that negative review, so to say.
Right. So here's the bottom line. So we can wrap this up. The value of an agent is to save you money because it's pretty much guaranteed going to save you money.
Right.
One way or another. Okay. So don't look at it as you're saving commission because you're going to lose a lot more than that if you try to go at it alone. So we could probably talk about this all day.
Yeah,
We
right.
got to wrap this up. So bottom line for people is it's going to save you money.
An agent, a good agent, a true agent that has their best client's interest is going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, whether you like it or not. But I think that's what a lot of people do need. They need to know reality. There's not always butterflies and roses at the end of the road. And those are the true values of an agent that are going to be able to take control of the transactions from start to finish, but also consult you again on all the decisions that you're going to make to make sure that you have the best and the most sound investment, probably the biggest investment you so far making in your lifetime. So
Maybe next time we should actually break down a full transaction. I think that would be cool.
yeah, that could be a good
Step
one.
by step,
Yeah.
in depth.
Stay tuned.
Spend like 6 hours.
Yeah.
All right. Mega show coming up next time.
Pretty soon. Excited. Thanks for having me again. Good luck at the open house and tune in to the next pad sessions.
Boom.